Hello, welcome to the DMU Enterprise and Business Services video, and I have Julie Randall from Incrementi, and she's going to talk to us about how to manage cash flow. But in the main, we're going to be looking at how to get your invoices paid. Hello, Julie, and welcome. Thank you very much for making the time.
Thank you. No worries.
Would you like to give us a bit of a background on you, and then we can understand why we've invited you, Julie, to tell us about how we can get our invoices paid?
Okay. Well, as much as I hate to admit it, I've got over 30 years of sales experience. Started selling advertising or working in sales, actually selling advertising for the local newspaper. And that was very much a baptism of fire back in the day when you would use yellow pages. And of course, we're not allowed to do that anymore. But as part of that, I was always taught a sale wasn't a sale until it was paid for. That was very much something that was drummed into me, if you like, at that stage. Since then, I've had quite a varying career, really. I've worked for EMAC, I've worked for other local newspapers, I've worked in finance quite a lot. I also did a stint working for Performing Rights Society, and I've also worked for a couple of finance houses as well. Within that career, I've coached and trained and mentored all my teams to success. And I suppose, to be honest, if I hadn't been made redundant 3 times, I probably would still be working in the sales arena as such. However, for the last 10 years, I've been working in credit management, and the last 4 of those I've been running Incrementi, which is a cash flow management consultancy. I think it's fair to say that here in the UK, when we talk about cash flow management, we always focus on collecting money. But in the US, they focus on making sales. I actually believe it's both. I believe that if you sell it in the right way and you follow some systems or processes, whichever word you like to use, then actually you're going to give yourself the best chance of getting paid, which ultimately is why you initiated to seek to make the sale of the product or the service in the first place.
Wow. So really, I suppose as running Incrementi, not only are you helping others, you're experiencing the same things. So you practice what you preach, as it were, which is always a fantastic thing, because that always develops as you're moving along, because you're really working at it yourself. So yeah. Clearly, cash flow is really vital to businesses, more so now than ever in these crisis times. So I think in general, one of the things that business owners get fed up with is chasing money. I know in my experience of product and service related businesses, chasing invoices to be paid is a pain in the backside, but it has to be done for your cash flow. So what advice would you give businesses about how to get their invoices paid quicker?
Well, my first 2 things are really quite basic. One is actually make sure you send the invoice in the first place. Mm-hmm. Believe it or not, so many people don't, or forget, or send it late. And then the only time they realise that they've actually not got paid is because someone's told them that they haven't received an invoice. I would also caveat that by saying that if you know you've sent it, then the excuse of I haven't received an invoice is simply that, an excuse. But make sure you send them in the first place. The other thing is, just prior to that, is to make sure that when you are actually going to be entering into business with somebody where you're actually going to be providing them a product or service, before you pay them, or before they pay you, more to the point, you need to ensure that you have got some form of agreement in writing. Now, it doesn't have to be a great lengthy thing, but even if it's an email trail, in an ideal world, I like a set of T's and C's. But if you haven't got that, there should be something that says you are going to do X and they have agreed to pay you X on X. Please start with that, because if anything goes wrong and later on you have to end up in front of a judge to sort it out, then that's one of the first questions you're going to get asked. And that's always what I ask people. I'll say, well, what was your agreement in the first place? So send your invoice, make sure you've got some T's and C's. Once you've done that, I always say to people that you do need to follow up with people, whether we like it or not. People do forget things do fall through the cracks. And in my experience of working in this role, probably 95 times out of 100, most people who don't pay on time have a genuine reason for that. It tends to be 5% of people who have no real reason other than the fact that they don't want to pay you. They are one of those sorts of people. Now, unfortunately, none of us know who those are normally, because they don't normally have a sign above their head. So if you are going to be working with someone or a business in particular where you're going to be giving them credit, if you can't afford to lose the money that you are entering into a contract with them with, I would always recommend you do a credit check in the first place. Now, I'm not saying that credit checks are, you only go on what the credit check says. I'm not saying that, but they are a really good guide, and they do give you a bit of information about the company that you probably didn't know. It's often quite interesting that you find that they're not based where you think they are. They're not owned by who you think they are, and maybe on paper they don't perhaps look to have the amount of money, or as a recommended credit limit, the amount of money that perhaps you're entering into a contract with. And I think often when I say to people, if you had known this information prior to entering into business with them, would you have done? And typically the answer is no. So you can do a few things to actually help, if you like, circumnavigate. A bit of due diligence, I think, is always worthwhile. Although I know that when you get your sale, most people are so excited, they just want to get on with it, and they don't perhaps take the time to do that. So it's always worth doing that. So when you get to the point where, they're late, I would always suggest that you, in the first instance, send some form of contact. Generally, you can do that via email. If your normal communications with them by email, then I would do that. I would also set yourself up a process. So, for instance, if you're expecting your invoices to always be paid within 30 days of invoice, I would suggest that when you haven't had an invoice paid by day 32, that you communicate with your debtor and ask them when they intend to pay it in a nice way. Generally, I would suggest that it's an oversight at this stage, and you're just giving them a gentle reminder. And quite often you'll find that that will elicit response, and you'll get the payment that you want. If you don't do that, or that doesn't result in what you want it to do, I would always then look to work to a 7-day process after that. So 7 days after your initial communication, if they haven't agreed to pay you, then you need to get tougher. And that will be looking to speak to the person that you dealt with, looking to speak to the accounts department, looking to get to the bottom of why this hasn't been paid. And there could be all sorts of reasons for that. Always be open to going into some form of negotiation on payment plan if that's necessary. I would also say that at this point, if when you've done the work and it's, some time has lapsed before your invoice is due, and you've not heard from them, and there isn't an issue that you are aware of, if they start bringing into the fact that now that there is an issue, I would suggest that's an alarm bell for me, and that potentially that they're looking to delay payment or wheedle out of payment. Because for me, a genuine complaint, generally you will get much, much sooner than when your invoice is due. It should be, I know you speak for yourself, Jackie. If you had something that was wrong, you probably wouldn't wait until the invoice came before you moaned about it, would you?
No.
Exactly. So when you have contacted them twice, I would always look to get payment dates from them. None of this, what I call wishy-washy, we'll try and sort it out in a few days. That's not what you're looking for. If there is a genuine reason why they can't pay you straight away, listen to that reason. If you feel it's acceptable, accept it, but get a payment date. If they then break the next payment date, then you need to be back onto them straight away, and really be quite tough with them. I think it's fair to say that most people, when they are met by persistence and firmness, they will generally listen to you, as opposed to if you just avoid the issue. Having said that, some people aren't comfortable chasing money. It's just not what they want to do. They're happy to make the sale. They're happy to have that relationship with someone. And I've got clients where things fall into two categories. Either they're not comfortable making those follow-up calls for payment because they don't want to jeopardize that relationship because it makes them feel uncomfortable. As well as I've got clients who don't want to make those calls because actually they get angry and they know that that's not going to benefit them anyway with maintaining a relationship with their client. I would suggest that if you feel that you have been fair, if you have given your client or debtor, depends how you want to view them at this point, you've given them time to pay you and they haven't done that and they've broken promises, then I would suggest that that would be at the point that you look to elicit the help of a third party. Whether you like it, we like it or not, people do pay much more attention to third parties. And we here, we have got a 95% success rate within 28 days. Generally, we find that people will sit up and take notice. But varies slightly on that depending on how old the debt is. But and that's another thing. Don't leave it for months and months and months, because the longer you leave your debt, it is far less likely for your debtor to pick up the telephone or to wake up one night and think, oh, actually, I must pay Bert that money. The chances are the longer it goes on, the less they will be likely to pay you, unless, of course, you do nudge them along. And whether we like it or not, it is a case of he who shouts loudest will get paid first. It may seem unfair, but that is the way it is.
Well, I think that is fantastic advice there. Thank you, Julie. And hanging on to what your last comment was there, COVID-19 obviously has had a huge impact for businesses on how they work and how cash flow has been for them, and many seen payments reducing further than normal. What would you advise on how to manage overdue payments in the current climate?
Okay, the two things for me really, it's vital to ascertain whether that is genuine or whether it is just a case of swinging the lead even further. If you've got a debtor who already prior to this scenario owed you money and was taking a long time to pay you, or that was their usual method of operating, then I would suggest that is they are using COVID-19 as an excuse. If that is not the case, if it is someone who you deal with who regularly pays you on time, you don't have any issues with ordinarily, I would suggest that it's a genuine excuse. And therefore you are probably likely, and I would certainly be more lenient with them. I would look to work with them to get the outcome that you're looking for, because whether we like it or not, we all know that most people have been affected. How they've been affected, well, of course, it varies from person to person. Some of the really small businesses, they aren't fortunate enough to have the government backups. And if you think, actually, do you know what, this is just a carry on of what you've always done to me, and actually now you're using this as an excuse, then I would suggest you elicit the help of third party sooner rather than later. Whether we like it or not, the court system is down at the moment. So I would suggest going to counter court judgment and stuff like that. It's probably not your best bet. I always suggest to my clients that it isn't the best bet anyway, certainly in the first instances. It can be a long-winded system, and now that we have closures, of course, it's even longer. I would suggest that what you're looking for is someone who will actually talk to your debtor, and whether we like it or not, whether despite what they tell us, most businesses, regardless of whether they're sat in their original business or they're at home, most businesses have got someone at the end of the telephone or at the end of an email. So what I would do is your attempts of communication, I would track. So if you're sending emails, you want to get a read response on those. Again, we know not everyone clicks the button, but at least if you try, you're going to be able to get more responses and be able to track those. An interesting one, actually doing some work for a client recently with a major national corporation, and every time you send an email to their email box, which is for payment, it comes back as not read, which I always find rather amusing. It's actually not read, but it's a glitch in their system, but nonetheless, So you want to track what you're doing. I would suggest you write to them. If you're sending things in writing, you want to be doing that via recorded or special delivery. And again, getting to the post office and getting in a queue isn't so easy these days, but it is worth going that extra mile to make sure you can prove that you have taken the necessary steps to chase this debt in the best way. If you're having conversations, then you need to make notes of those conversations, date them, time them, who you spoke to, etc. And follow that process through. And as I said, if you engage the help of a third party, then they will work through that with you until they come to a point where either you have been paid or alternatively you're not getting paid at all, at which point then a decision has to be made on what the next steps are. And there are some different things out there you can do, but again, it does depend on the type of debtor, also the amount of money, etc. And again, don't forget about things like late payment. You are perfectly at liberty to charge late payment charges, and you can find those on the internet, government website of what they are, and you can add those to your debt. And I would suggest that if someone is persistently avoiding you on payment, then actually that's more than fair to do. I would say that someone who is struggling generally, maybe then I wouldn't want to do that.
That is just amazing advice there. That's a lot to take in there. So just to summarize there, Julie, I think what you're saying is, and correct me if I'm wrong, do your due diligence, so do your homework, and set up a process of how you actually do chase those invoices, chase that debt. Be human about it, and communicate. But also, if they're not playing ball, keep a log of those conversations so that you can make the correct decision should they not pay. Would you say that's a fair summary? That is absolutely brilliant. Thank you so much, Julie. That is really great. If you want to get in touch with Julie because you need her help, her email is Julie, Julie, at Incrementi.co.uk, or you can phone her on 01223 782 708, or of course DMU Enterprise and Business Services can always help, and I can always put you in touch with Julie should you want to. So thank you very much for your time, Julie, and we really hope that has helped you SMEs out there with chasing your debt.